Good morning, Dan and Amy. So the response to Trump's executive order on immigration that suspends immigration for 90 to 120 days from 7 majority Muslim countries generated a lot of reaction over the weekend at airports. It's also, and in the streets with protests and the like, it's also generating legal action. The Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, is set to announce a lawsuit it will file on this executive order this morning. And to join us to talk about that and really the underlying policy debate, we're pleased to be joined by Ahmed Rehab. He is the executive director of the Chicago office of the Council on American Islamic Relations. Ahmed, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me, Dan.
So the basis for the lawsuit, and we don't have to get into the legalese, but the general policy basis for the lawsuit?
We believe that the underlying premise of the executive order is unconstitutional, that it is indeed targeting people based on religion and national origin.
But then how do you square that with the fact that the other 43 majority Muslim countries are not on the list?
Well, 100% of the ones on the list are.
Okay.
It's not a matter of exclusion. It's a matter of inclusion. And also, who agrees with me is the guy who put it together, Rudy Giuliani. He was on Fox News the other day saying that he was asked to wrap a Muslim ban in a legal cover. So I think it's no secret that this is what it is out of the horse's mouth.
So do you think this is harmful to U.S. interests because it shows the Muslim world that we seem to be prejudiced against Muslims as a country?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I mean, do you think that this is going to affect American soldiers and diplomats, CIA agents overseas or in these Muslim countries, the 7 that are listed on this travel ban?
In what way would it affect them?
That they'd be more of a target on their back.
I don't think so. I think that the target is on the backs of the people who are trying to come here to visit family or to come back home or to come for medical purposes or educational purposes. The stories we're hearing, real people with real stories. I mean, this isn't just, a ban on paper. We had a lady that was coming to visit her mother who just exited cancer surgery, and she had a valid visa return ticket, a letter from the Cancer Institute. She'd been here before many times, never overstayed, and yet she was sent back. She was banned from entering. She's not a terrorist, and nobody's claiming that she is. A lady with 5 children, quarantined for 10 hours. A guy who was doing his PhD at Stanford University, still unable to return to complete his PhD, although he's been here for many years in good standing, doing a PhD at a top university. A guy who's coming to receive potentially an Oscar, is nominated for an Oscar, cannot come because he's from the wrong country and is now banned from entering. I mean, these are the everyday stories in real life, human beings that are affected by this, and it has nothing to do with national security.
And there's no question that there are individuals that are affected by it, and individuals who, mean to do America no harm as well. But in terms of order of magnitude, I mean, just using this weekend as an example, the numbers were, at least as reported by Department of Homeland Security, 325,000 foreign visitors on Saturday. And the net by the time Reince Priebus and other Trump administration officials were on the Sunday talk shows was about 24 that were still detained for some questioning. So, how onerous really is this important word, temporary ban?
Those numbers are inaccurate. There were at least 24 just yesterday at O'Hare, and there are hundreds of airports around the country, and this has been going on for 2 days, so you can do the math. I don't know where they're getting that number from, but
Homeland Security,
thousands of people, the number is inaccurate. Thousands of people are affected by this, and in different ways. Some people are actually banned and returned. Some people are questioned in secondary screening and put through the ringer for, 5 to 10 hours. Phones are confiscated. People, Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts and emails and personal photos are looked into. And it's just, it could get worse from here. I mean, this is just the beginning. Refugees are henceforth barred from entering the country. So To me, the problem is, look, I'm an American who wants a safe, secure, prosperous country for myself and my children and my fellow Americans just as much as anybody else. So that part is not in question or in debate as far as I'm concerned. What is what accomplishes that and what doesn't. To me, what accomplishes that, and this is verified by the track record of the intelligence community, is hard intelligence, is actual red flags that point to suspicious behavior, that point to criminal background, tips and things like that. What doesn't work is simply throwing this wide dragnet over a whole community of people just because of where they're born or what religion they follow or how tall or how they look or whatever it is. I mean, these are not national security things to look at. What is suspicious behavior and criminality.
Well, just a point of order. I mean, these countries were tagged by the intelligence, so presumably that was intelligence community based on some hard intelligence under the prior administration as part of legislation that President Obama signed in December of 2015, weren't they?
There was no ban on
no ban, but there was increased scrutiny, more restrictions on travel visas from those countries that were identified under the Obama administration. So this is taking it to another level, yes, but I mean, they were identified. I mean, you're talking about hard intelligence. They were identified, and there was action taken by the previous administration specific to these countries.
But that makes my point, is that there was already requisite vetting, and the results are clear. There are a total of zero Americans that were, killed by any terrorist attack. I mean, no terrorists from these countries have struck killing Americans. They've been from other countries. Total of zero.
Right. So I know we have to find a balance between compassion and vigilance, but of the people that were detained specifically here at O'Hare, were all of them eventually released? Or are you saying that some were sent back to their countries?
Some were sent back to their countries.
Well, do you have any concrete numbers for us?
No, because, there are so many different attorneys on the ground, and we're trying to piece all the information together. I'm aware myself of a couple of clients that I have that were sent back, even though they had all the requisite paperwork. And as you know, there was a stay that was adjudicated in a federal court in the East, in New York and in Boston. So, the court has problems with this as well. And I think there'll be more problems revealed with this language and with this directive, the more it is challenged legally, because at the very core of it is, again, a distraction that is not just inconveniencing, people, but actually taking us away from the focus we need to have to protect the country, which is to look at suspicious behavior and individual criminals rather than to feel good about just blocking entire communities from coming.
Is this materially different than President Obama's announcement at the end of his term that he was reversing the Cuban policy and turning away Cubans that were attempting as refugees seeking asylum to come to this country?
Yes.
How so?
This is an executive order that, by the signature of one man, bans people based on national origin. And in my mind, my view, according to what I hear from Rudy Giuliani, religious background, that to me goes against the grain of the Constitution. And if the argument is terrorist attacks that have happened in those countries, let me tell you, the overwhelming majority of victims of these terrorist attacks are Muslim. What we're fighting are groups like ISIS, who are the enemy of the people of those countries. If you were to travel to those countries, as I have, these are people who, wake up in the morning, their kids go to school, they have families, grandparents, get-togethers, everyday life. Like I don't know how the average American imagines these countries to be, but they have schools and school buses and, shops. And then you have these groups, right, who are underground in those countries. They're not sitting at the, coffee shops, high-fiving people as they walk by. And they're nefarious in those countries. They're criminals in those countries. And they're killing innocent people in those countries. So the people who are traveling here are people who are victims, potential victims of the same groups that we don't like and that we fight against.
Well, I can see that point, but in addition to that, ISIS has also said, part of their propaganda, and I think we should take a lot of it seriously based on how propaganda has translated into action, is that they will embed ISIS terrorists in Syrian refugee populations. They said that previously, and Jim Comey, the FBI director, still has said previously, as have others, that we don't really have the ability, just speaking Syrian refugees as an example, we don't really have the ability to properly vet these individuals in terms of paperwork and understanding who they are and why they're coming. So if ISIS is the enemy, as you say, and we agree on that, then what about that concern and the effective vetting system we have?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's get serious and think about this seriously. So here you are, this underground, nefarious terrorist organization that is trying to disrupt and sabotage life in the East and life in the West. We all agree that that's what they are. Would you, as a member or a mastermind of operations within ISIS, publicly declare your strategies? If you were really trying to do that, would you announce it so that, so that other countries make it more difficult for you to achieve your goal? The only intention of declaring this publicly is to ban Syrians from coming, is to put a rift between the West and refugees, because their entire modus operandi is to drive a wedge between Muslims and the West, which is the same thing that anti-Muslim voices in America try to do, and that's why I see them as on the same side. Whether in the West or in the East, you have these extremist voices that believe there are civilizations, East and West, that humans from the East and the West, or from Muslims and from Christians, ought to be on the opposite side of a line in the sand. ISIS is very much about that. I mean, the terrorist attacks in the West are not meant to defeat the West. I mean, even 9/11, you kill 3,000 Americans, as terrible as that is, because one is one too many as far as I'm concerned, but it's not going to sink America, and they know that. But what it is going to do is cause America potentially to turn against its Muslim population as voices here in America begin to say Muslims are the enemy. Therefore, mission achieved, according to Al-Qaeda, because what they really want to do is drive that wedge between Muslims and others, so that Muslims can say, oh, well, look, we're hated. Look, it is indeed a war of religions. They'll never accept us, and then begin to gravitate more towards the extremist ideologies of these groups. And that's what we're fighting against, this CARE and other groups.
All right. He is Ahmed Rehab. He is the executive director of the Chicago office of the Council on American Islamic Relations. Ahmed, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Very much a pleasure. Thank you, Dan.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.